What's up, guys? Today I want to teach you how you can easily create some 3D endless runner mechanics for your games. And well, obviously, I can't show you every detail in just one video, but I will try to show you as much as possible. We will cover basic movement, jumping, animations, obstacles, and so on. And if you want to learn Unity 3D development from scratch, you can check my course, my video course. Link will be in the description down below. And that is my 3D game development course about space shooter game. It's quite nice. So, well, if you want to check, you can check. And now let's get started with our project. Now, as you see, I have this empty 3D project opened. And first thing is to create some kind of ground for our player to run. And for that, I will use some simple 3D objects. But if you have any other assets that you want to use, maybe you have roads, you can do it as well. So for me, I will create 3D object cube. Okay. This cube obviously will act like our ground. So it means that we should scale it correctly. So for the X, let's change it to be 10. For the Z, let's change it to be 100. And that's pretty much it. By the way, you see these three arrows, and they represent directions and axes. For example, this blue arrow means the Z direction, and in general, it's considered to be forward direction in Unity. So our game will start from here. So Z will be forward. It's crucial step because when we start coding, and if you set everything differently, your game will look quite different. So just know. Now our ground is very bright. So I will create new material to change color of it. And by the way, in 3D games, in Unity, to change color of the game object, we just need to create material. And to do that, we go in the assets folder, empty space, right click, create. And we should find material. Let's call it ground. And well, we can make it any color that we like. For example, green. And we just need to drag this material into our game object. And now if we go in the game view, this is how it looks like. Well, right now our camera is set up incorrectly and it's in the wrong position, but we will deal with it. For example, first of all, right now we should add some player model for us to use. So I prepared this pack and I will leave a link to it in the description down below. And it has this character. If we go in FBX, it has few different characters. We can use any of them. I will use this mage one. So let's drag and drop it into our scene. Let's F to zoom in. Let's see. Oh, it's in a perfect position, I think. All right, our game will start from here. Let's move it a little bit in the middle. Okay, next step will be to actually add some kind of animations to our player, and it already comes with animations. So if we basically scroll this drop down, we see that it has these animations, animation clips. So let's find jumping and running. Where is our running? It has lots of different animations basically. Okay, it has this jump long, jump short, and well, let's see how it looks like. Yeah, we use this jump short. So let's drag and drop it into our player. And also let's find the running A. And let's drag and drop it as well. Now if we select our player, it has this animator component already automatically added on. And if we select this controller mage one, and if we double click, we see that it already has animation. Right now, our jump is orange, as you see, and it has this transition, this line. Basically, when the animation is orange, it means that it's default animation. So when you hit play, basically, this animation will play, and that's not exactly what we want. We don't want our jumping to be our default animation. We want our running to be default animation because it's Endless Runner style. So to make animation default, we just need to right click on the animation and select set as layer default state. And right now we have this running animation default. Also, what we should do, we should select this running motion, find where is our running, like here. Let's hit edit. Let's scroll down, and we should make sure that this loop time is selected because we want our running to be looped. So just select this loop time and hit apply. Mine already set to loop because I already changed it, but it was not set to loop as I remember. So just to make sure, check if it's looped or not, and don't forget to hit apply. Okay, that's basic mechanics and basic setup of the animator and player. Now let's continue working on our player. Now, let's select the player and what we need our player to have. Well, obviously our player needs to have some kind of collider to interact with our ground and other game objects, because Cube already has this box collider by default. And let's select our player. Let's hit add component, and I will search for the capsule collider, and it will add capsule collider, which is quite small. We are not able to see much right now. So what we can do, we can change radius to be higher number, and also height. Let's change height. And as you see, we have this capsule which goes up. But problem is that right now our height is a little bit too much. So let's change the height. Let's change center to be on the top. And we should make sure that it covers whole player from the feet. So let's change height. Let's increase height just a little bit. I will change my center, and that's pretty much it. Now if we zoom in, you see it has this capsule. Obviously it won't be seen in the game, in the actual game, but we are able to see it in the scene view, which is nice. Okay, now that we have this capsule added, next thing that we will need is to go and create some C# script to actually start working on it. And to create C# script, you just need to go in the empty space of the hierarchy panel, create C# script, and call it whatever you want. So I will call it player mage, for example. And let our script compile, and then we should start working on it. First thing that we will do basically is to make our player to actually run, because that's the very first basic mechanics of this endless runner types of games. So let's assign our player script into our player. So I will drag and drop it here, and now it has this player script. Let's double click to open in Visual Studio, and let's start working on it. We will need few variables in order to make our player to actually run. And variables, if you don't know what are variables, they are just like containers to store some information or data, for example. And there are few types of variables. For example, they are floats and integers to control our speed. They are strings to control text elements, and so on and so on. And to create variables, we just need to go on the top right here and say, for example, public. And if we make variable public, it will be seen in the inspector. And if we make it private, it won't be seen, and I will show you very shortly. So public float, and let's call our first variable speed, and let's make by default to be 5. We can always change it from the inspector in the later stages. Also, we want to have reference for our rigid body, but we have not added rigid body just yet. And rigid body is main physical element for the Unity, and it adds some gravitation and other physical forces. And to add rigid body to your player, we just need to select player, hit add component, and search for the rigid body. And as you see, it has few different components. And now we should get reference for the rigid body with the get component method. First, let's create variable container for the rigid body. So private rigid body, and let's call this one RB. And in the start, we can say RB equals get component. Component name is obviously rigid body 2D. Rigid body, sorry, not the 2D. All right, now we have reference for the rigid body. Now let's go in the update, and well, basically we should make our player to move when our game starts. And there is few different ways how we can achieve that. And one of the ways is to use transform.translate method. So let's say transform.translate, and let's open brackets. And this transform.translate takes few parameters. It needs to have some vector free. Vector free is just freedom, the dimensional point. So we can say vector free, and we can say dot forward because we want forward movement on the z-axis. As I said, in the blue arrow, we want our player to start running in the direction, in the forward direction. So we can say vector free dot move forward times speed to have some kind of speed, and we will also multiply it to time dot delta time for this move movement. Basically, we save this simple script right now. So Control and S or Command and S if you are on Mac to save your script, obviously. Let the script compile, and we should, well, we already have speed of 5. So let's hit play and see what will happen. Oh, our main camera is in the wrong position. So let's select main camera and let's position it a little bit better. For example, right here, I will rotate on the X a little bit. And now let's hit play. And as you see, our player has default running movement, and also he plays our running animation, which is fine. Now, next step will be to control some side movement. And for that, let's go back and let's create one variable, public float. Let's call this one side speed, and let's make it by default to be 7. Now, what else we want? And how to control our side movement in general. Well, first thing is to get some information about input, about horizontal axis, because if we select our player, and when I change this kind of movement, my position on the X changes, and X is considered to be horizontal axis. Unity, by the way, has the input manager, and if we go in edit, project settings, it has this input manager field, and if we drop down this axis, it has all these different inputs and variables and buttons. And also it has this horizontal axis, which is already set to some buttons. Well, obviously we can change the buttons, but I won't do it. I will leave it as a default, A and D, left and right. That's exactly what we want. But the key point is that we can get access to and information about this horizontal input and then use in our script. And to do that, we will go back in Unity. And to get information about our input, we just simply need to say input dot get axis. And in brackets and quotation marks, we should type horizontal, but make sure that you type horizontal correctly because everything is case sensitive there. And now we have information about our input. But in order to use that and to make it as simple as possible, we will create one container, one variable, and we will store information about our horizontal input there. So let's say float horizontal input equals. So now we are storing information about our horizontal input in our horizontal input variable. Now, in order to have some side movement, we can again use transform.translate method. But this time, we can say vector free, and instead of forward, we can say vector free dot right. And we can multiply it to our horizontal input. We can multiply it to some side speed. And well, or multiply it to time dot delta time to make it as smooth as possible. Now basically if we save the script and if we go back, let's see what will happen. Let our script compile, let's hit play. And now when we can basically move our player left and right. And right now our camera is not following our player, so it's hard to see what is happening. So one simple way just to prototype it, because it's not the great way to do it and that's not the correct way to do it, we will select main camera and we will make main camera to be child of the player. So I will simply drag and drop my main camera into the player. So now our player has this main camera element inside. And now if we hit play, you will see that main camera follows our player. And yeah, now our main camera follows our player, which is nice. And we are able to move. And we have this weird rotational movement. That's exactly why it's not a great idea to use this main camera. But I will teach you how to do better cameras later. But for now, let's talk about jumping. For the jumping, what we want to do, we want to open our player script once again, this one. And let's start working on it. Well, what we need to do for our jumping. First of all, in the update, we can say if input dot get button down, and in brackets and quotation marks, we can say jump. In input manager, there is a button of the jump, and we can use information about that. So, and it's set by default to spacebar. You can obviously change it from the Unity editor, but let's use default ones for this tutorial. So basically, when we touch our spacebar, what should happen? Well, we should jump. But we don't know how to jump just yet. So outside of update, we'll create a new function with the name of jump. So void jump. And we will say here that when we touch spacebar, we can use rigid body's add force method to jump. So we can say rb.addForce. And this add force method takes few parameters. First of all, it needs to know some direction. We want to use vector3.up because we want to jump basically. And we can multiply it to some kind of speed. And let's create some kind of speed variable. So public float, let's call this one jump force. And let's scroll down and we will multiply it to jump force. And also after that we can say comma, and we can use some force mode. We can say force mode dot impulse, which will make our jump more snappier. And that's pretty much it, how we can jump. Now we can call this jump function right here when we touch our spacebar. We can say jump and brackets and semicolon. We can save the script. Let's go back. Let our script compile, and we will have one problem, and I will show you very shortly. But first of all, let's select our player. And you saw in the a few moments ago that we had some weird rotational movement. So to avoid that, what we can do, we can find the rigid body on our player and we can freeze rotations on the X, Y, and Z, because anyway, we don't need any rotational movement. So let's hit play now. Well, I forgot to assign some jumping value, jump force. So let's scroll down and let's make jump force to be, I don't know, 9. Well, you can obviously play with those numbers and do it how you like. Well, basically we have jump, but the problem is that we can spam click our spacebar and we can jump forever. That's not exactly what we want, and jumping is also too much, so I will make it to be 6. And to control the jumping, we want to have some kind of indicator which will control if we can jump or not. So we should only be able to jump when our player is on the ground, but if our player is has already jumped. So for example, our player is in the air. Doesn't matter if we touch our spacebar or not, we should not be able to jump anymore. For that, we will need to have few components which will help us to do that basically. So let's go in our script, and we will create one boolean, and boolean are just the variables which will return true or false, and they are good to check some mechanics in general. So let's create private bool, and let's call this one is grounded, and by default we will make it true, because when our game starts, our player will be on the ground indeed. Now let's scroll down, and when we are jumping right here in our jump function, we can say that is grounded equals false, because in that moment, in that specific moment, we are not on the ground anymore. But it's not enough. We should also check and see when we are on the ground. So when we are standing on this ground game object. And for that, we can use the tag system, basically. For example, we can select our ground game object, and it has this tag element, and tags are just like categories. We can assign specific categories to specific game objects, and we can also create our own tags. I already created this ground tag, but just to show you how you can do it, I will delete it. So let's select ground, let's select tag, we will hit add tag, hit plus, and let's call this one ground. Let's save. Now let's select cube again, and let's assign ground tag there. Now we can go in the script and use special function, which is basically on collision enter function. And this function will be called when two game objects will collide. And we can be more specific and say if collision.gameObject.tag double equals, and in quotation marks we can say name of our tag and type it also correctly, just like name of your tag. So mine is ground with a capital first letter, so I will type it correctly. And basically what we are saying is that if our player will touch the collider of this ground, so in this case our ground, what we want to do, we just want to say that we are on the ground. So you can say is grounded equals true. And that's pretty much it. Only thing that is left is that to add some condition when we are touching jump key. And by the way, this is the end sign. And here we will pass is grounded, our boolean. So we added two conditions, as you see right here. And in order our jump to happen, both of these conditions should be true. And now, when we will be in the ground, we can click on this jump button, so it will be true. And we will be also on the ground. So we will jump. But when we will be in the air, yes, we can still click on the space bar, this jump button, and it will be true, but we will not be able to jump because this is grounded will be false. I hope it makes sense. Now, let's save the script. Let's go back, let our script compile, and now everything will work just fine. So if we hit play right now, we will only jump once, and no matter how much I press the space bar, doesn't matter, we are only able to jump. Well, you can go ahead now and place some obstacles. You can use some 3D object cubes just to represent your obstacles, and just to have more dynamic look and see how you are doing that. By the way, you can duplicate those obstacles, and to duplicate you can select any of them and hit Ctrl and D. Just very basic obstacles, just to have more dynamic look. Obviously you can change these cubes with the proper obstacles if you have any kind of models, but or this tutorial, it doesn't matter. And now we can we have the very basic movement. Obviously we are not playing jumping animation just yet, so let me quickly show you how it's gonna work. Well, we have this running and jumping animation, but we don't have any kind of way to tell when to go from the running to jumping state and from the jumping to running state. For that, first of all, let's select parameter, and I will add one. I will hit plus and I will add one boolean here. Let's call this one is grounded. And we can use this boolean to control the transitions, but first of all we need to have some kind of transitions, and to make transition we just need to select running, make transition to jump, and from the jump as well. And let's select the transition from the running to jumping. We will uncheck as exit time. We will also uncheck transition duration. We will make it 0. And if we scroll down, it has these conditions. We can click plus sign, and basically we want to jump when we are not grounded, so we will make is grounded to be false. But for the jumping to running, we will first of all select as exit time, unselect exit time. Transition duration we don't need as well, and for the conditions we can say is grounded is true. And that's pretty much it. Only thing that is left is to go in the script and basically first of all get a reference for our animator. So we can say private animator, and let's call this one anim. Let's get a reference just like we did with rigid body. We can say get component animator brackets and semicolon. And now after this jump happens in the update, what we can say is that anim.setBool, because our parameter is grounded, is boolean, so we will open brackets and in quotation marks we will say name of the parameter correctly, spell it correctly, again it's case sensitive, is grounded is name of my parameter. I will say comma, and it also needs to have some boolean, as you see. And boolean we have is grounded to control when we can jump or not, so we will pass is grounded boolean there, and semicolon, save the script. And that's pretty much it, how you can simply control these transitions and animations into our script. And now if we hit play, everything will work and jump animation will work as well. Yeah, indeed our jumping is working now. And that's pretty much it, basic mechanics of the Endless Runner style of games. Obviously this video was a little bit in the fast pace because I wanted to talk about a lot of things, but as I said, if you want to learn 3D development from the scratch, even if you are completely new to Unity, you can enroll in my course. It's tailored for the beginners, so you will learn a lot of informative things, and obviously temp will be much slower there. And also, if you like my videos and want to see more videos like this, please like this one, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to ring the notification bell. Thanks for watching and see you soon.